opens to truths the world cannot see, where the celestial light of God's wisdom pierces the darkness of human tradition. Envision a twilight forest where the air is thick with the scent of ancient pine and the faint musk of earth after a gentle rain, a fragrance that whispers of creation's sacred beginnings, carrying the breath of eternity on its wings. The fading light casts a silver veil over the towering trees, their branches swaying in a celestial dance, each movement a hymn to the Creator who formed them. A distant owl's cry pierces the stillness, its mournful note echoing like a prayer through the shadowed canopy, a sound that resonates with the longing of a soul seeking truth. A soft mist rises from the ground, shimmering with flecks of starlight as if the heavens have descended to unveil secrets older than time, their celestial glow illuminating the path ahead. Above the first stars emerge their light, piercing the indigo sky, a celestial tapestry that speaks of eternity, of a divine plan that transcends the fleeting concerns of this world. In this hallowed sanctuary, God's presence descends a weight both tender and eternal, a warmth that seeps into your soul, enveloping you in a divine embrace that speaks of love, truth, and redemption. His voice whispers through the rustling leaves, a celestial summons that beckons you to uncover the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface, to seek clarity in a world of shadows, to walk a path illuminated by His eternal light. What does your spirit discern in this sacred stillness, where the celestial and the earthly converge in a divine symphony? Are you ready to unveil the hidden truths that await, to peer into the shadows with a heart attuned to the voice of eternity? The Jehovah's Witnesses stand as a celestial enigma in the tapestry of modern faith, a community that radiates devotion, discipline, and a vision of a coming paradise, yet casts a shadow that few dare to explore. They knock on doors across the globe, their gentle smiles and earnest words offering a message of hope, a celestial promise of a world free from pain, a future where Jehovah reigns supreme, a paradise earth where the faithful will dwell in eternal peace. To millions, they are a beacon in a troubled world, their faith unwavering, their commitment to evangelism, a testament to their belief in a divine plan, their lives a reflection of a celestial order that promises salvation. They are known for their door-to-door evangelizing, a practice rooted in their interpretation of Matthew 24:14, which declares, "And this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." Their rejection of blood transfusions based on their understanding of Leviticus 17:10-14 and Acts 15:29 sets them apart as a community willing to sacrifice even life itself for their faith. Their apocalyptic worldview, centered on the imminent arrival of Armageddon, shapes their every decision, a celestial urgency that drives them to prepare for a future they believe is near at hand. Their refusal to celebrate holidays such as Christmas, Easter, and birthdays, which they deem pagan in origin, further distinguishes them, a rejection of worldly traditions that they believe dishonor Jehovah. Yet when the door closes, when the smiles fade, and the message is set aside, what truths linger in the shadows of their carefully crafted image? What celestial secrets lie hidden beneath the surface of their serene exterior truths that speak of stringent control, profound personal sacrifice, and the heartbreak of those who dare to question or depart? This journey is a celestial exploration into a world where faith and control intertwine, where the pursuit of divine truth comes at a cost that severs sacred bonds, leaving hearts in ruins and spirits longing for redemption. It is a journey that challenges our understanding, that alters our perceptions, that invites us to peer beyond the celestial facade and into the hidden realities of a faith that has shaped the lives of millions, for better or for worse. The Jehovah's Witnesses are distinguished by their doctrinal firmness, a structured way of life that sets them apart in a society often marked by spiritual ambiguity. They are a community that radiates devotion, yet their practices raise profound questions about the balance, but a created being, the Son, subordinate to the Father, a celestial hierarchy that they believe aligns with the true teachings of Scripture. They rejected the concept of hell as a place of eternal torment, teaching instead that the wicked will be annihilated, their existence erased in the final judgment. A belief that they argue reflects God's justice and 1945 passed without the promised resurrection, the organization again adjusted its celestial narrative, claiming that the event had been misunderstood, that the patriarchs would return at a later unspecified time, a celestial mystery that required patience and faith. By 1975, the leadership, now under the direction of the governing body, suggested that the end was imminent, pointing to the generation that witnessed 1914 as the one that would see Armageddon, a prophecy that stirred the faithful into a frenzy of evangelistic activity as members prepared for what they believed would be the final days of this world. Yet when 1975 came and went without the promised end, the organization once again reinterpreted its celestial expectations, claiming that the generation of 1914 might extend longer than anticipated, a celestial adjustment that allowed the movement to continue despite the disappointment of its followers. Each failed prophecy, while a source of celestial controversy, was met with a reinterpretation, a claim that Armageddon had begun invisibly, that a miscalculation had been made, or that Jehovah's timeline was beyond human understanding, a celestial mystery that required unwavering faith. These reinterpretations, however, did not erase the impact of the failed predictions on the lives of the faithful, who had often made significant sacrifices based on the expectation of an imminent end. Members sold their possessions, abandoned career ambitions, and forsook long-term plans, all in the belief that the end was near, that their celestial hope would soon be realized. When the prophecies failed, many were left disillusioned, their faith shaken by the celestial promises that had not come to pass, their lives marked by the consequences of decisions made in the heat of apocalyptic fervor. Yet the organization's ability to reinterpret these events, to frame them as part of a larger celestial plan, allowed it to retain its followers, to maintain its influence over a community that had been taught to trust in the divine wisdom of its leaders, even in the face of apparent failure. This emphasis on the proximity of the end times has had a profound impact on the daily lives of Jehovah's Witnesses, shaping their choices with a celestial urgency that often overshadows earthly ambitions, a sacred call to prepare for a future they believe is near at hand. The organization, led by the governing body in Warwick, New York, discourages its members from making long-term plans outside the community, teaching that the current world, referred to as this system of things, is fleeting, destined for destruction in the coming Armageddon, a celestial event that will usher in a new era of divine rule. Higher education, career advancement, and the accumulation of wealth are viewed with suspicion, seen as distractions from the sacred work of evangelization, the celestial mission to spread Jehovah's message before the end arrives. Members are urged to prioritize their faith, maintain spiritual purity and alignment with Jehovah's will. The organization, under the authority of the governing body, establishes detailed regulations that dictate a strict code of conduct, a celestial boundary that separates the faithful from the world, reinforcing their identity as a chosen people, a flock set apart for Jehovah's eternal purpose. Members are prohibited from celebrating holidays such as Christmas, Easter, and birthdays, which are deemed pagan in origin, a rejection of traditions that the organization believes are rooted in false worship, a celestial purity that sets them apart from the world's corruption. They are also restricted in their choices of music, movies, and literature, forbidden from engaging with content that might be considered immoral, that promotes values contrary to Jehovah's teachings, or that challenges the organization's doctrine, a celestial censorship that ensures their minds remain focused on the divine. These rules create a sacred separation, a celestial boundary that reinforces the community's identity. But they also raise profound questions about the balance between faith and control, between celestial promise and earthly cost, questions that echo through the lives of those who have lived within this framework. The rejection of higher education, the discouragement of long-term planning, and the strict regulation of daily life can leave members ill-prepared for life outside the organization, creating a dependency that binds them to the community. Even when doubts arise, a celestial chain that holds them fast to the faith they've been taught to embrace. The failed predictions of Armageddon, while reinterpreted by the leadership, have led some to question the organization's authority, to wonder if the celestial promises they've built their lives around are truly from God, a celestial doubt that lingers in the shadows of their faith. These initial controversies, the failed prophecies, the sacrifices demanded, The strict regulations set the stage for deeper revelations for the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of this celestial community. Truths of control, sacrifice, and the profound impact on those who dare to depart, truths we shall explore in the chapters to come as we journey deeper into the celestial enigma of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Celestial chains, the strictures of control. As we journey deeper into the celestial enigma of the Jehovah's Witnesses, we uncover a tapestry A small group of elders who reside at the organization's world headquarters presents itself as the sole interpreter of God's will on earth, a celestial authority that speaks with divine certainty, issuing directives that members are expected to follow without question, for to question is to rebel against Jehovah himself. These directives cover a vast array of behaviors, creating a sacred separation between the faithful and the world, reinforcing their identity as a chosen people. A flock set apart for Jehovah's eternal purpose. A celestial community that stands in stark contrast to the corruption they believe defines the current age. The rules imposed by the governing body are not mere suggestions, but celestial mandates, a sacred code that shapes the daily lives of Jehovah's Witnesses with a precision that borders on the divine. Members are prohibited from celebrating holidays such as Christmas, Easter, and birthdays, which are deemed pagan in origin, a rejection of traditions that the organization believes are rooted in false worship, a celestial purity that sets them apart from the world's corruption. Christmas, with its origins in ancient winter solstice celebrations, is seen as a pagan festival, a distortion of true worship that dishonors Jehovah by blending his name with idolatrous practices. Easter, with its roots in fertility rites and the worship of ancient deities, is similarly rejected, its celebration viewed as a betrayal of the sacred truth of Christ's resurrection, which the Jehovah's Witnesses commemorate annually during their memorial service. Birthdays, too, are forbidden based on the organization's interpretation of biblical accounts, where such celebrations are associated with negative events, such as the beheading of John the Baptist during Herod's birthday feast. Matthew 14:6-11. These prohibitions create a celestial boundary, a sacred separation that reinforces the community's identity, but they also isolate members from the cultural traditions that bind families and communities together, leaving children to navigate a childhood marked by exclusion, unable to participate in the celebrations that define so much of societal life. Beyond holidays, the Jehovah's Witnesses are restricted in their choices of entertainment, a celestial censorship that ensures their minds remain focused on the divine, free from the taint of worldly influences. Music, movies, and literature are subject to strict scrutiny, with members forbidden from engaging with content that might be considered immoral, that promotes values contrary to Jehovah's teachings, or that challenges the organization's doctrine. Popular music with explicit lyrics, movies that depict violence or immorality, and books that question the authority of the governing body are all off limits, a celestial restriction that shapes the cultural landscape of the community, creating a bubble of purity that shields members from the world's corruption, but also limits their exposure to diverse ideas and perspectives. Members are taught to avoid anything that might lead them astray, to guard their hearts against the temptations of the world, a celestial vigilance that requires constant self-examination, a sacred discipline that reinforces their commitment to Jehovah's standards. The organization's control extends to the most intimate aspects of personal life, a celestial oversight that leaves little room for individual choice, a sacred order that demands absolute obedience. Dress codes are strictly enforced, with members expected to maintain a modest and conservative appearance, a reflection of their celestial purity and devotion to Jehovah. Women are instructed to avoid provocative clothing, to dress in a way that reflects humility and godliness. Their attire a testament to their submission to divine standards. Men too are expected to present themselves neatly, their appearance a reflection of their role as spiritual leaders. Submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church, his body, of which he is the Savior. This verse is interpreted as a divine mandate for male headship, with the husband positioned as the spiritual leader of the family, the wife called to submit to his authority, a celestial structure that reinforces traditional gender roles within the community. While the organization does not openly condone abuse, this hierarchical model can create challenges, particularly in cases where the husband's authority is misused, where emotional or physical harm occurs under the guise of spiritual leadership. Women are often counseled to remain in difficult marriages, to endure hardship as a test of their faith, a celestial expectation that can leave them trapped in toxic relationships. Their voices silenced by the very community they look to for support. A celestial decree that cuts them off from the congregation, a sacred exile that forbids all contact with other members, including their closest loved ones. The impact of disfellowshipping is nothing short of devastating, a celestial wound that severs sacred bonds confirm an allegation before it can be considered valid, a celestial requirement that is nearly impossible to meet in most cases of child abuse, where the crime is often committed in secret with only the victim and perpetrator present. Without a second witness, the elders acting as celestial overseers within the congregation are instructed not to take action, leaving the accused free to remain in the community, often with sacred trial to be endured for the sake of the congregation. Some victims, too, afraid to speak out, remained in the community. Their abusers still present their trauma, buried beneath a facade of celestial purity. Others, unable to bear the silence, left the organization only to face the additional pain of disfellowshipping their cries for justice. Met with ostracism, their lives marked by the double wound of abuse and abandonment. The celestial shadows of these cover-ups cast a long and dark pall over the Jehovah's Witnesses, raising questions about the true cost of their sacred order, about the balance between faith and justice, between celestial promise and earthly pain. These celestial strictures and shadows, the rules that govern every aspect of life, the practice of disfellowshipping. The allegations of abuse cover-ups reveal a community bound by a sacred order that demands absolute obedience, a celestial system that offers hope, but at a profound cost. They set the stage for the final chapter of our journey, where we shall explore the experiences of those who leave the challenges they face and the broader implications of the Jehovah's Witnesses practices, a celestial reckoning that invites us to question the true nature of faith control and freedom in a world shaped by divine promise and human reality. Celestial Exodus, the journey of departure. As we reach the final chapter of our celestial odyssey into the hidden truths of the Jehovah's Witnesses, we stand at the precipice of a sacred reckoning, a moment where the divine light of truth pierces the shadows of control, revealing the profound cost of departure from this enigmatic community. The Jehovah's Witnesses, with their celestial promise of a paradise earth, have woven a tapestry of faith that radiates devotion, discipline, and hope, a beacon in a world shrouded in darkness. A vision of a future where Jehovah reigns supreme, where pain and sorrow are but distant echoes of a bygone age. Yet beneath this sacred vision lies a shadow that grows darker. With each step, we take a shadow of isolation, of loss of celestial wounds that mark the lives of those who dare to leave. In this third and final part, we shall journey into the hearts of those who have walked away, exploring the celestial exodus that defines their departure, the challenges they face in a world they were taught to fear, and the broader implications of the Jehovah's Witnesses' practices on society, a celestial narrative that invites us to reflect on the true meaning of faith control and freedom in a world shaped by divine promise and human reality. The decision to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses is not a mere change of faith, a simple shift in belief. For some, it is the weight of the organization's failed prophecies, the celestial promises of Armageddon that never came to pass, that first plants the seed of doubt, a seed that grows with each reinterpretation, each adjustment, each unfulfilled hope. They recall the fervor of 1914 when Charles Taze Russell proclaimed the invisible return of Christ, a celestial event that would herald the end of days, only to see the years pass without the promised Armageddon, the organization's leaders reinterpreting the prophecy to maintain their authority. They remember 1925 when Joseph Franklin Rutherford predicted the resurrection of biblical patriarchs, a celestial promise that led to the construction of Beth Sarim, a mansion in San Diego meant to house Abraham and Isaac, only to stand empty as the prophecy failed, the organization once again adjusting its celestial narrative. They think of 1975 when the governing body suggested the end was imminent, urging members to prepare for the final days, only to see another generation pass without the fulfillment of the celestial promise, leaving many to wonder if the divine truths they've built their lives upon are truly from Jehovah, or if they are the constructs of human minds, fallible and flawed. For others, the journey begins with the weight of the organization's control, the celestial strictures that govern every aspect of their lives, a sacred order that leaves no room for individuality, for questioning, for the freedom to seek truth beyond the confines of the watchtower. They feel the burden of the rules that dictate their dress, their entertainment, their relationships, a celestial yoke that binds them to a life of obedience, a sacred path that offers purity, but at the cost of their autonomy. They recall the prohibition on holidays, the rejection of Christmas and birthdays, moments of joy that they were taught to shun as pagan moments that left them isolated from the world. Their children excluded from the celebrations that define so much of societal life. They think of the restrictions on music, movies, and literature, the celestial censorship that kept their minds focused on Jehovah, but also shielded them from the beauty, the diversity, the richness of human expression, a sacred isolation that left them longing for a world they were taught to fear. They feel the weight of supervised courtships, the pressure to marry early within the faith, the celestial hierarchy that positioned husbands as spiritual heads, often leaving wives to endure toxic relationships in the name of submission, a sacred order that prioritized obedience over well-being. These whispers of doubt, these celestial questions, often grow into a storm, an internal crisis that can last for years, a sacred struggle between the longing for freedom and the fear of loss. Many Jehovah's Witnesses, even after beginning to doubt, remain in the organization out of fear. Fear of the consequences of leaving, fear of the isolation that awaits, fear of the world they have been taught to dread. From a young age, they are indoctrinated to believe that there is nothing good outside the organization, that the world is a place of darkness ruled by Satan, a place where suffering and despair await those who stray from Jehovah's path, a celestial warning that keeps them bound to the community, even when their hearts cry out for release. They are taught that apostates, those who leave or speak against the organization, are agents of Satan, condemned to destruction in Armageddon, a celestial condemnation that instills a deep fear of questioning, of seeking truth beyond the Watchtower's teachings. This indoctrination creates a sacred paradox, a tension between the desire for freedom and the fear of eternal loss, a celestial struggle that defines the journey of departure for so many. The decision to leave often comes after years of internal turmoil, a sacred breaking point where the longing for freedom outweighs the fear of loss, a celestial moment of clarity that propels the individual into the unknown. Some choose to distance themselves gradually, a slow fading from the congregation, a sacred retreat that involves stopping attendance at meetings, avoiding involvement in congregation activities, and quietly stepping away from the celestial order that once defined their lives. This approach, however, is rarely enough to escape the organization's reach for the Jehovah's Witnesses. Consider anyone who abandons the faith to be avoided, even if they have not committed a serious offense, a sacred exclusion that follows them into the shadows. Others opt for a more direct exit, writing a letter of resignation and sending it to the elders, a celestial declaration of their departure that severs their ties with the community in a single decisive act. This option, while quicker, has immediate consequences. From the moment the letter is accepted, the individual is considered disassociated, a sacred status that forbids all contact with other members, a celestial exile that leaves them isolated in a world they are ill-prepared to navigate. The stories of those who have left are heartbreaking, celestial testimonies that reveal the true cost of departure, the profound pain of isolation, the sacred wounds that mark their lives long after they walk away. A mother might recount the day she told her family of her decision to leave, her voice trembling as she describes her own mother's cold response. The words that cut deeper than any blade. "You are no longer my child." She recalls the moment her mother refused to hug her, asking her to pack her things and leave, a celestial wound that severed a bond forged over decades, a sacred love replaced by silence. A young man might share the pain of losing his siblings, their shared memories of childhood erased by the organization's decree, their voices silenced by the celestial mandate to shun a sacred rift that leaves him longing for a connection that may never be restored. A woman might describe the day she was disassociated, the moment she realized she had lost everything: her friends, her family, her entire support network, her life once filled with people. Now a void of isolation, a celestial exile that forced her to learn how to live again, to rebuild from the ashes of a faith that had defined her existence. Celestial challenges, rebuilding in the wilderness. The act of leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses is but the beginning of a sacred journey, a celestial wilderness that stretches before the departed, a landscape fraught with challenges that test a new path in a world they were never prepared to navigate. The organization's discouragement of higher education rooted in their belief that the end times are near leaves many former members without the academic credentials necessary to secure stable employment, a celestial sacrifice that limits their career opportunities and financial independence. Implications of the organization's practices, a sacred reckoning that casts a long shadow over its reputation, its influence, and its place in a world that is constantly changing. The Jehovah's Witnesses, with their structured way of life, their celestial promise of a paradise earth, and their unwavering commitment to evangelization, have built a community that radiates devotion, discipline, and hope, a sacred order that offers stability and purpose to millions across the globe. Yet the shadows of control, exclusion, and secrecy mark on the organization's reputation. The practice of disfellowshipping, while intended as a sacred discipline to maintain spiritual purity, has also drawn widespread criticism, a celestial policy that enforces compliance through fear, a sacred exclusion that leaves the departed isolated. Controversial policies survive in a world where information flows freely, where the voices of the departed can no longer be silenced, where the celestial shadows of control, exclusion, and secrecy are brought into the light of public awareness. A sacred reflection, the balance of faith and freedom. As we conclude the celestial odyssey into the hidden truths of the Jehovah's Witnesses, we stand at a sacred crossroads, a moment of reflection that invites us to peer into the eternal light of truth, to question the balance between faith and freedom, between celestial promise and earthly cost, between divine guidance and human control. The Jehovah's Witnesses, with their structured way of life, their celestial promise of a paradise earth, and their unwavering commitment to evangelization, have built a community that radiates devotion, discipline, and hope, a sacred order that offers stability and purpose to millions across the globe. Yet the shadows of control, exclusion, and secrecy that linger within this community cast a long and dark pall over its celestial promise, raising profound questions about the true nature of faith, about the cost of obedience, about the sacred wounds that mark the lives of those who dare to depart. The stories of those who have left are a celestial testament to the cost of this departure, a sacred narrative that reveals the profound pain of isolation, the challenges of rebuilding in a world they were taught to fear, the longing for a connection that has been severed by the organization's decree. They speak of mothers who can no longer hug their children, of siblings who turn away from each other, of marriages that dissolve under the weight of celestial exclusion, a sacred wound that leaves them grappling with loneliness, depression, and the aching absence of those they love. They share the practical challenges of departure, the lack of education, the financial instability, the struggle to navigate a world they were never prepared to face, a celestial wilderness that tests their resilience. A celestial hope that offers stability, purpose, and a vision of eternity to millions. But the question remains a question that echoes through the lives of those who have left, through the societies that grapple with the organization's practices, through the hearts of those who seek truth in a world of spiritual complexity. Can an organization with such strict rules, such controversial policies, survive in a world where information flows freely, where the voices of the departed can no longer be silenced, where the celestial shadows of control, exclusion, and secrecy are brought into the light of public awareness? This celestial odyssey invites us to a sacred reflection, a moment to peer into the eternal light of truth, to question the balance between faith and freedom, between celestial promise and earthly cost, between divine guidance and human control. True spirituality should not be based on fear or coercion, but on the freedom to believe, to question, to seek answers with full awareness, a sacred freedom that allows the spirit to soar, to find its place in the eternal tapestry of God's love. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for some, represent the only truth, a celestial promise of eternal life, a sacred refuge in a world of darkness. For others, they are an organization that instills fear, that limits freedom of thought, that demands a cost too great for the human spirit to bear a celestial enigma that challenges our understanding of faith, control, and justice. As we stand in this twilight forest where the scent of ancient pine lingers and the stars pierce the indigo sky, let us reflect on the lessons of this journey, on the celestial truths we have uncovered, on the sacred wounds we have witnessed. What does your spirit discern in the stillness of this moment where the celestial and the earthly converge in a divine symphony? Are you ready to question, to seek to find a truth that sets your spirit free? Let us not be afraid to think critically, to investigate, to seek answers for ourselves. For in doing so, we honor the eternal light of God's truth, a light that guides us through the shadows, a light that leads us to a future filled with hope, with love, with the sacred freedom to be who we were created to be.